An absolute nuke just got dropped in the Counter-Strike scene. Star Opper Nico Dawes is going to OG. Give it up, everyone. I mean, that's what we've been waiting for. And Odyssey is going to Falcons. Slightly predictable, his father figure did leave him to go there. And he kind of has not looked whole without him on the team. So we get a cute reunion due to Saudi oil money. But it was also the reason they broke up in the first place, so... okay. But guys, we're glass half full here, so happy for the reunion at the end of the day. Anyways, along with this, not even 24 hours later, we got news of Aurora buying out the EF roster. Another insane nuke, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't say it's as crazy as the Odyssey news. It's really just the same EF, but with a new look. It was kind of just a shock value move. And we also get to see Suhei play on Liquid. Maybe it would have been better if we didn't see him. So overall, we have just been absolutely blessed with roster moves as of late. So that got me thinking, what is that feeling you get when you first see moves like this? When you first see the news break for the first time? The excitement, confusion, initial shock. Honestly, whether it's a good or bad move, just the first time hearing about it is great. And to be honest, normally the best part of these moves is like right after they happen, just because there is so much speculation. The entire situation is just an unknown. How will the move turn out? Do you love it, hate it, or just feel meh about it? And after you watch the player and the team for a while, you learn the unknowns and the excitement kind of dies down. Now watching that player on that team is normal, and after a few weeks, who really cares? But that initial feeling of learning about the news is so crazy, man. It's like a drug. I feel like I just smoked crack. So let's explore some of Counter-Strike's history and reminisce over some of the craziest roster moves of all time. First, let's start with one that'll be easier to remember. This year, we had a roster mania, and it delivered. Constant heroin shots straight to my goddamn bloodstream. Robs to Vitality. Oh, Elise to FaZe. Oh, Nerds to Liquid. Oh, Falcons buy out the Heroic roster, and now Heroic is mostly Swedish, but then Ninjas in Pajamas are not mostly Danish? Also, Nico is being added to that Heroic core on Falcons. Russian teams revamped. Joda to EF. I mean, this shit was insane, man. It was honestly probably the most insane transfer period in Counter-Strike history. But the craziest part is after all these moves were done, the most unexpected one happened. Roster mania is over. We've started playing in tournaments. There are a billion rumors that Mouse were gonna just completely crumble during the roster mania, and they somehow all stuck together. Then they played one tournament, lost to BetBoom, and kicked Suhei. What the fuck? Every team dreams of having a young elite IGL. Mouse had that. The dude that brought them to relevance. And I mean, the initial shock to this move was wild. The entire community was just confused. Was it because a bigger team bought him out? No. The players on the team just wanted to change. And to replace him would be Spinks. He would come into the team to replace Brolin's roles because Brolin would take over the captain duties. So not only was this move met with immense confusion, I mean, Suhei just brought Mouse to top 4 at a major, and they were consistently a top 5 team throughout the entirety of last year, but immense hate. How could Mouse do this? Are they stupid? Brolin IGL, this dude says 4 words in a series. How could he call a team? I was actually streaming when this news first broke, and I was completely shook. It's just tough. Mouse benched Sui, you're lying. What? What the fuck? Thank God for the power of hindsight, because apparently these guys are goddamn geniuses. The boost in firepower, along with Brolin actually being a great IGL, has propelled them into easily the second best team in the world. Wow, I'm surprised that worked out so well. Maybe banding together to kick your IGL for more firepower does work. It's 2019 and the IEM Kato Major is underway. To no one's surprise, Astralis have made the finals. But to everyone's surprise, so is some team named ENCE. They were a fine team, ranked number 11, and had placed first in the EU Minor, ahead of teams like Vitality and Mouse. So they were good, but this was an insane overachievement. Now, they would end up losing to Astralis in the finals, but at this time, who didn't? It was clear that ENCE had left their mark on the scene, and everyone was excited to see what they would do next. They would actually perform fairly well during the rest of the year, beating Astralis and getting their revenge in an A-tier tournament, and making the finals of 2 more S-tier tournaments. But they unfortunately had to play Prime 2019 Liquid, so it is what it is. Now it was time for the second major of the year, but a few weeks before, we had received some incredibly strange news. The team's IGL, Alexi B, would be benched for Sunny. Why? He had helped build this team from the ground up, turned them into an elite contender, and now is being thrown to the wayside? And I mean, he was just as surprised as everyone else, stating, "I've been benched from ENTS. This came out of the blue for me, and at first it hurt. Now I just have to deal with it. Despite the hardships such as a failure at a tournament or having different opinions, we were still able to stay on the right path and reach success." Now, Sunny was a great player for Mouse, don't get me wrong, but this was just strange. And taking the wind out of the team's sail right before a major, it just didn't make sense. Now, they would still somehow make playoffs, and eventually we were given reasons as to why this move happened, as the team's Opper Alu would release a book where he talked about the situation, and it basically came down to this. Alu and the team's young star rifler, Sergey, wanted Alexi out of the team before the IEM Kato major, but due to their insane success, the rest of the team disagreed. But then again, during the summer break of 2019, Sergey said he wanted Alexi out of the team, and this time he was more stern. He told them it was either Alexi or it was me, and because he was such an insane young rifling talent, the team picked Sergey. This move would end up being a catastrophic failure, and over the next year, that ENTS core would completely crumble, never to even get close to the same success again. And it looked like they also doomed Alexi, as he would go to OG, where the team looked good, but not great. They would never win a tournament. Then he would join G2, where it didn't even last a year. Go to NIP, that didn't work. And it was looking like that one decision from Sergey had destroyed all 5 players on the team's career. But you guys know this story does have a good ending. Alexi would then go on to get picked up by Navi, where he would have a little bit of an era in 2024 and win a major. God bless Alexi for proving all the boys on ENTS wrong and just all of his doubters in general. This move is incredibly similar to the Mouse move, and it has more ties than just that. Jimfat, the star rifler for Mouse, is the brother of Sergey, and it was looking like he was going to be going down the same path as him, ruining a team he was on by kicking the young IGL, but somehow for Jimmy, the Goonfat, it actually worked, while Sergey is now a truck driver. God bless him. But this original ENTS story is why people were so critical of the Mouse one in the first place. The year is 2022, and Heroic have made the finals of the IEM Rio Major. They lost, sadly, but this was an incredible achievement for an org that had been considered a tier 2 team for nearly all of their existence. So how did they improve into one of the best teams in the world? Well, it really all starts back in 2019. Cadian had been used and abused all of his career, and after 5 months of being on North's bench, Heroic signed him to be the team's main opper. At this time, Snappy was still the main caller for the team, but then some weird shit happened with FPX kind of signing the team, then simply not signing the team, leaving the players basically homeless for an event.
I don't think I've ever been this mistreated in my entire life.
And following that whole debacle, 2 players would be benched, Esatag and Snappy. This move had meant that Cadian would now take over the IGL reigns. The first iteration of the Cadian-led Heroic included Borup, Fake Nico, Stown, and Tessez. This would happen during the online era of CSGO, and apparently it's exactly what the team needed, because shortly after forming, they would skyrocket into the #2 ranked team in the world. This was due to winning ESL 1 Cologne 2020 Europe kinda easily, not dropping a map in their BO5 finals. After this, the team would continue to have solid success, but wouldn't make the finals of another S-tier tournament, and eventually they would switch out Fake Nico and Borup for Refresh and Shush. Then in early 2021, they would finally win another S-tier tournament in ESL Pro League Season 13, which would once again skyrocket their ranking to #3. After LAN play resumed and the PGL Stockholm Major ensued, the team would impress, making semi-finals and just barely losing out to G2 in a 3rd map overtime decider. Nothing else really happened for the rest of 2021. The team was meh. But in 2022, the team would look very strong, just sadly not strong enough to win an S-tier LAN. They would make playoffs at PGL Major Antwerp, but that was kinda it. And finally, the best iteration of Heroic was formed. Refresh would be benched for Yabby, and then the team would start frying. Shortly after is when they would make the finals of that IEM Rio Major we talked about, and then they would win the Blast Premier Fall Finals, the organization's first ever S-tier LAN. This would boost them into being the #1 ranked team in the world. In the start of 2023, they would make the finals of 2 more S-tier LANs and the semi-finals of the Paris Major. But after this Paris Major semi-finals loss, cracks in the team started to form. They were getting a little bit tired of coming so close, but just not getting over the hump. But it didn't look like it was getting to their heads too badly, as they would go on to farm another Blast event, winning the organization's 2nd ever S-tier LAN, and it looked like Heroic would continue to be one of the best teams in the world. Then Cadian was benched, followed by Stown and Yabby a few weeks later. The roster just started imploding. Stown and Yabby were then acquired by Astralis, and Cadian would be acquired by Liquid. What the fuck just happened? We would later find out it was actually an inside job. The team was sabotaged by 2 of its players, Stown and Yabby, or as we now call them,
both Stabby and Yawn.
They came up to Heroic with an ultimatum, similar to what Sergey had done a couple years prior. It was them or Cadian. They would later state the reason for this was they were upset with the dynamics regarding the leading of the team. If Cadian was benched, they would both extend their contracts with the org. And well, Heroic could not afford to lose these 2 young star riflers, so they chose the duo. But the same day all this went down, they were presented with their new contract extensions, and they told Heroic they had already made plans with Astralis, causing the org to bench both of them due to a breach of trust. Then a month later, Astralis bought them out. Now, according to the players, they didn't have any agreements with Astralis prior to this. This is just simply how it worked out. But personally, I find that hard to believe. Why would you completely destroy the team that brought you to relevance for no reason? And do we really think the legendary organization of Astralis was okay being the 2nd best team in Denmark? If I had to guess, and this is only a guess, okay? I have no evidence. Please don't come after me, Astralis. They came up to the players with this super villain-ass plan. They all agreed to it prior, with the goal of completely destroying Heroic, who was at the time the best Danish team, and return themselves to relevance as they would become the new Danish powerhouse. Well, the plan sort of worked. It crippled Heroic for a short period of time because they had 2 fucking players. But as we know, this did not work out in the long run. Heroic has been better than Astralis for the past however many years. And while all this is insane, batshit crazy, it doesn't even end there. Cadian's time on Liquid, along with the Stabby duo's time on Astralis, was complete dog shit, to be honest. So in late 2024, after Astralis failed to do literally anything, they would bring in Cadian to IGL. What in the fuck? While we're on the topic of Astralis, this organization has been involved with some insane roster moves throughout their history. Kicking Kerrigan for Glaive is whatever, right? The team wasn't performing like they wanted to, and it was better for both parties. No, the earliest insane Astralis roster move happened in 2018. Astralis goes into E-League Major Atlanta incredibly hot, making the finals in the 3 tournaments they attended right before. But up to this point, they've kind of been known as chokers, at least when it comes to majors. Anyways, we get into the group stage, they barely squeak into the playoffs 3-2, but then they start absolutely cooking and make the finals. So far up to this point, Device is frying everyone with a 1.43, but in the finals, they have to play Virtus Pro, the team that knocked them out of the last major, and something awful is happening. They go on to lose the first map, and their star opera Device is choking. He had a 1.11 in map 1, not terrible, but in map 2 he drops a 0.76, easily the worst on the team. But somehow Astralis still win, barely. It then comes down to a map 3 train decider, and Device is still asleep. He would be one of the main characters in that Simple Nico video I posted, if not for one man, Kierby. Astralis goes on to barely win the 3rd map 16-14, and that motherfucker put the entire team on his back. Astralis win their first ever major, and Kierby becomes the youngest player to win a major and major MVP. They would go on to win another S-tier tournament a few months later and get semis at PGL Krakow. Although after that major, they wouldn't really do anything, and after a disappointing finish at the Boston major, Kierby would shock everyone. He would leave the team and join their biggest Danish rival, North. This move was met with insane backlash. I mean, he was just ranked as the 15th best player of 2017, was on the best Danish team in the world, who had just recently won a major. Why would he do this? The community didn't know, and to be honest, his teammates didn't either. Glaive would go on to say, less than 2 hours before the press conference, we found out Kierby has signed with North. speechless and more motivated than ever. He didn't even tell his teammates. An insane move that didn't work out. Well, for KRB, Astralis would go on to sign Magisk and win 3 majors, becoming the greatest team of all time. And you guys thought we were finally done talking about Astralis. No, no, no. This is just an Astralis roster move video. The best player in Astralis' history is easily Device. 3rd best player of 2015, 3rd best player of 2016, 5th best player of 2017, 2nd best player of 2018, 3rd best player of 2019, 3rd best player of 2020, plus a billion event MVPs and 2 major MVPs. Device is him. But after Astralis' reign, they kind of fell off and fast. A lot of the players ended up having problems with burnout, so they tried to do some weird shit with 6-man rosters and kept having players in and out of the team. Ultimately, nothing really worked. And in early 2021, while we were still in the online era, Device would leave Astralis to join Ninjas in Pajamas. A lot of the time, roster moves are leaked beforehand, so you kind of know they're coming. This was just a complete bombshell dropped out of nowhere. Not a single leak. The entire community was shook.
What the fuck?
What?
Late April Fool's, za.
What the fuck?
See my common number.
Must be late April Fools.
Holy shit, the world must be upside down or something.
That's crazy, man.
What?
Not April 1st, what the fuck?
Pinch me, what the fuck?
In shock. Who is it? What the fuck?
NIP would actually go on to win a LAN in late 2021, so it looked like this move might work out. They would even make the playoffs of Stockholm.
Already was amazing. This one, NIP in front of the home crowd. Stockholm, are you with us? Then let's get it underway. Nico, oh, wow.
But a few months later, Device would go on medical leave. He had extreme stress and sleep issues during his time on the team, partially due to his girlfriend who had been cheating on him with one of his friends. I mean, honestly, valid mental health issues. That just sounds awful. He would go on to say, "I've always had stress problems, and ever since I started, it's always been a lot with my stomach. I think I had a year and a half or 2 years where I just threw up every other day because of stress. It's just the pressure, the travel days, and that you never relax. And then at the end of NIP, I ended up being alone in Sweden without any friends and no girlfriend or anything. And then I just started getting worse and worse with stress, and I didn't know what it was. It just kept going. I genuinely feel awful for him. I can't imagine a worse situation to be in. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy." And after his long hiatus, he would go on to return to Astralis in 2022. One of the most insane runs in Counter-Strike history had just occurred. Somehow, someway, Cloud9 have just won the Boston Major. And what makes this even crazier is going into this tournament, the team had severe internal issues. According to the CEO of Cloud9, there were also these underlying issues and fractures I saw on the team already before this event. Along with stating, "I think Skadoodle was already looking to take a bit of a break. The team hated each other, Skadoodle's heart wasn't in it, and this would become even more apparent shortly after the major win, and I mean very shortly after." It felt really good to see these guys come together and win such an epic event in such an incredible way. But quickly after, and I'm talking from the moment we took this picture to the time we got to the shuttle to head back to the hotel, the fractures were evident. Even after winning, there were players that were upset. They didn't feel like they were getting the recognition they should, and there was already a huge cloud over the future of the team. That's a Stewie 2K moment right there if I've ever heard it. Anyways, the major win apparently wasn't enough. Then a few months later, Skadoodle would end up actually taking his break, and Stewie would leave to join SK Gaming. This was apparently incredibly unexpected, especially to his teammate and boyfriend Tarek, as Stewie didn't even tell him in person, he just sent him a text. And due to this, the community would start to label Stewie as a snake that had backstabbed his boy. And then this clip happened shortly after. Well, expect the unexpected, because these boys weren't done just yet. Shortly after Stewie would join SK, they would turn into MIBR, and then they would also sign Tarek. A cute reunion similar to Nico and Monacy on Falcons. The legendary core that won 2 majors just sniped the 2 players who won the most recent major to try and create an America's powerhouse team. This was incredibly cursed. And the team made in Brazil even donned the American flag for one event where swag stood in for fur. These were two insane moves that completely caught the community by surprise, but it did look like it could work on paper, although in practice it didn't, and the team did not last very long. All right, let's do some quick fire roster moves. Shiro to Spirit was kind of expected, but incredibly risky and ended up working out insanely well for him. Simple to Liquid was a fairly insane move. I don't think anyone really expected him to join an NA team. Cloud9 and Liquid have had multiple insane cursed moves that everyone just mostly hated, and for good reason. Zeus going back to Na'Vi after winning the major with Gambit was like, what? I mean, they were simply his first love. He couldn't turn his back on them. Magisk, Dupree, and Zonic to Vitality was strange, but that was also a move that worked out incredibly well. Guardian and Olaf to FaZe was an insane bombshell. And finally, Nico to Falcons, just because bro said, I stay, just to actually not stay. And to be honest, while looking through a lot of these roster moves, it seems like players and orgs are just getting progressively bolder as the years go by, as at least in my mind, some of the most insane roster moves have happened recently. Stabby plus Cadian with Astralis, Suhei randomly benched, Nico to Falcons, then m0NESY shortly after, and that wild roster mania we had. And if players and orgs are getting more bold with the more money being dumped into esports, imagine how crazy roster moves will be in the next few years. I'm personally extremely excited to hear about them for the first time and get that initial crack feeling. Let me know if I missed any roster moves that completely melted your guys' brains. But that's it for this one, fellas. I'll see you guys later.